My name is Regaugetswe Kgoadi. I'm client associate at Aeon Investment Management. I have about 9 years experience in the industry, spanning client service, financial management, as well as portfolio administration. So my role at Aeon now is specifically focused at client service management. So I basically manage the client service function. So the function in itself, in its entirety, that's what I do. So that includes managing client queries. In my role, managing client queries means managing queries across the business. So I work closely with the portfolio managers whenever there's an investment query. I'll work with the compliance manager if I have a compliance query. I'll work with the performance analyst if I have a performance query. So it's quite broad in a sense that I know all aspects of this business. My job allows me to have a bird's eye view on the entire asset management firm. But basically that's what I do. I'm in a reporting function and I report whatever the client requires. For me, a lot of my time is spent managing queries, and it's a lot. And it's different queries. So when I started at Aeon, I actually had a big problem managing 5 different queries at the same time because it was completely different for me. I'd never done that before. So I can literally move from compliance to performance to business management, literally like in one sweep, because that's literally what my job is. So I find myself having to have good organizational skills, definitely good organizational skills, and good being able to work with people across all levels. I work with everyone in this firm, literally everyone in this firm. So you must be able to work with people across all levels. That's why for me, this job is aligned with who I am because I respect people on a people level. I don't have criteria with regards to who I respect more. So I don't respect titles, I respect people, which makes my job seamless. Because I deal with the trainees now the same way I deal with the CIO. It's not different for me because I'm dealing with people at the end of the day. So in that instance, there is definitely self-alignment with my job because I organically show up as myself. I don't need to remind myself to be anything, you know. So yeah, that's my job in a nutshell. So my least favorite queries, let me start with those ones, has to be questionnaires. Like we do client DDQs. So a client due diligence questionnaire, they basically ask you every single question under the sun regarding your business operations. You're looking at a document, right? A Word document, just questions, 40 pages, just questions. That you have to complete. By the time you're done, you have plus 200 pages, you know? And this document has to be flawless in terms of editing. Your editing has to be on point, no grammatical errors. You have to, and it's very easy to start missing detail if that is what you do on a regular basis. Because if this is what I'm always doing, then sometimes I won't see easy mistakes, you know, because I'm always sort of in the same information, giving the same information, so it starts to look the same even though it shouldn't, you know. So that has to be the absolute bane of my existence, but I do it because it's my job. But it's just the worst. It's completely time consuming, but has to be done perfectly each and every time. You can't drop the ball when it comes to how you present yourself. That is why the company places big emphasis on how we write. Even how we write internally is important, you know. It's very important to show people that you take what you do seriously. So it's highly time consuming. But for me, I think that is the one thing that taught me the company or the industry or the asset management business. Because you literally read about every single aspect of the firm. Every single aspect of the firm. So they're but obviously you get to a point where it's like you know everything. So initially highly educational, but then it does get sort of tedious when you are doing it from experience. So yeah, every single time. I've been doing it for 9 years and it's painful. every single time. You get roles where you just do that. In the bigger firms, you actually get people that only do DDQ questionnaires. That's all they do. Because of the amount of work this thing is, it is literally a role all on its own. I would die. There's no way. My most favorite has to be fraud management, right? So it's amazing how easy it is for people to fall into traps like that. And it always reminds me how desperate people are and why it is important that we need to do our jobs well, as an industry, because it's very easy to just lie to people and say that you are doing something that you're actually not doing. And because people are generally not versed on what we do as an industry, they fall victim, all the time. Like, people lose like a lot of money, like 80,000 rand there, and it's gone. And it's people's life savings that are just literally down the drain. So it brings me back to self every time I have to explain to me retire, her money is gone. And there was a time actually that we were able to get Capitec to close down certain accounts that these guys were using to scam people, right? So we are able to go to those extents in terms of trying to help people, but unfortunately we cannot get you your money back, So the human element of my job is actually caring how our industry, even if it's not us, how our industry affects other people, particularly the ones that don't have much. It's generally the case. So anything that is aligned with, on a human level, because we deal now with pension funds, we don't deal with the individual pension fund members. So any area of my job that requires me to be cognizant of the person on the ground is the thing that I actually like about my job. It reminds me that we're actually serving actual humans, So we need to do our job well. So I studied undergraduate. I studied a BCom Financial Management at the University of Pretoria. And then post that, I did an honors degree in business management at UNISA. And to be quite honest with you, in terms of what I learned and what I brought in from university into my working life, it's probably just the ability to think. That's it. Otherwise, skill is actually learned at a professional level. And that's just the fact of the matter. Skill is learned at a professional level. You can go as far as, one of my colleagues was actually saying that it's funny that in CVs, people say that they're proficient in Excel, but you actually realize, especially the graduates, they actually realize when they start working that they're not proficient in Excel, because they haven't done it on a professional level. It's very different when you do things on a theory level or on a school level versus to how it's applied professionally. So a lot of the skills that we do have are gained when we start working. We just learn how to think in university. That's all I think I got from my degree, the ability to think and take initiative. Because that's what I was doing during my studies. I needed to take initiative because if I didn't study, I would have failed. So it taught me discipline to do what you needed to do, So I'd say that's how, for me particularly, that's how my degrees particularly fed into what I do. It's more on the softer level. It's what I learned, on a softer level. That then helped me to manage and build my skills. I did for postgraduate. I did. It was very tough. It's tougher now that I have a child, but Evodia, we have to do what we have to do. For the longest time, I didn't study for many reasons, which I'm sure the question will come up later. I didn't study for many reasons, but one of the reasons was that I just didn't have capacity. There was just no way that I could, with a demanding job and a demanding baby, there there's no time, there's no space. So I didn't study because I didn't have that. But then you come to the fact that there are many other people that are like you that are studying anyway. So there will never be a perfect time in your life where things settle down. Adulting, that's the thing about it. Things never ever settle down. You kind of have to make a plan and make things work. So that's the reason why, part of the reason why I decided to go back to school, regardless of my circumstance. I need to make it work, because otherwise I'd never do it. It's very important, right? But it's the type of qualifications now, right? So in this industry, what matters the most is professional qualifications. So your CASA, your CFAs, your FRMs, your KAYAs, your CFPs, those are the qualifications that are highly regarded in the industry, more than your traditional university degrees. They do appreciate if you come from a good university and have good marks, but at the end of the day, what matters the most, definitely professional qualification and skill. Right now, skill definitely trumps any qualification that you can have, yeah. I started working in 2012, I think. So I spent about a year and a half unemployed, but during that time I was studying. So I only started a year and a half after I finished my undergraduate. And I got into the industry through a graduate program. Fortunately for me, you can't do it now anymore. Fortunately for me, when I got into the industry, I didn't know it. Back in university, the only thing we knew related to investment was investment banking. Nobody knew asset management. So I literally got into asset management by chance. Now you can't do that anymore. Now you've got no excuse not knowing this industry, you know? So that's how I got into the industry. I got into an industry on a graduate program that was supposed to last a year. But I remember when I got there, I'm like, guys, I'm not leaving. I'm sorry, but luckily for me, God just aligned. I guess I just aligned with God's plans, because I did get full employment after that. They'd never hired a graduate before me. Yeah, and they'd been running it for a while. So that's how I got into the industry. And I actually stayed in that job for a long time. For about 7 years, I stayed in that job. So I think it was twofold. It's always twofold. One, I was lucky because at the time, the company needed to fill that space, right? So there was a need for my capacity. But then at the same time, I actually made it such that I was filling in the gaps that were already existing, right? So that's how I got in. I noticed that there were gaps and I filled those gaps, but also luckily that aligned with the fact that the company did actually require capacity. I think anyone that has worked with me will tell you that I am very reliable, right? So I showed up where I needed to show up, and I wasn't really bound by job spec, right? So I'm not really, things generally don't make me feel like I'm smaller than I am. So I wouldn't shy away from doing certain things just because maybe, you will think less of me or anything like that. So I think generally I am very reliable, and I'm not, even now, I do operate all of the time outside of my job spec. That's just how I am. Yeah, I think definitely that. Reliability. I remember even they made it a company value after that. They made it a company value because, it's very important to have people around you that you can rely on. So for me, it's probably twofold again. There is one mistake that I did at the beginning of my career, which was lack of career planning. So I got into the job, but I didn't have a plan in terms of what I was going to do with the job, where I was going with the job, So I did all that I needed to do, and I was helpful and I was reliable, but at the end of the day, I didn't have a set clear plan. So I couldn't pivot. So because I couldn't pivot, I couldn't study further beyond my honors, because how do you study when you don't have a plan? for your career. What do you study for? You don't have a plan. So things like certain skills and training that I could have done, studies that I could have done, spaces that I could have exposed myself to, those things were not done because I did not have a plan for my career. So that then presented a big challenge in my career where I couldn't progress, because I had no plan. And it took me the longest time to actually realize where the issue was, all right? It took me a long time. It took me years into my career to see the fact that not planning or not having an idea then meant that I was not going to do everything else that I needed to do in order to progress. You can't progress if you don't know what you're going to progress into, So definitely that was a big challenge on my end, self-imposed. So the other challenge is the normal challenges that everybody has. You will be undermined in the workplace. You will experience racism in the workplace. You will be looked over in favor of other people for things that don't even matter, because of where you come from sometimes, you know what I mean? But those are facts of life, and those are things that you can read about and get in any book, you know what I mean? So I think for me, the thing that helped me navigate those challenges that are common with everyone is that they're common with everyone, and that there must be a way to deal around issues like that, and working with very difficult people. It's actually opened me up a lot to people where I seek to understand even the most difficult people, because if you have to work with people, whether you're difficult or not, I still have to work with you. So I have to find a way around you. So those challenges, but most of it made me better at the end of the day, where I function the way that I function because I realized that we're all different, and just because you're different doesn't mean you have a problem, So yeah. So the future, number one, includes studying, because now I'm in the correction phase, right? Because I spent a long time not studying when I should have. So now I'm in the correction space where I am studying, but I'm studying not to progress my career. I'm studying for self-actualization. So I think that, in actual fact, I believe that my next growth phase is going to come from self-actualization and not necessarily what I'm studying now. Because I've been 9 years in. There's no way that a qualification can be the reason why I get my next job. I've been doing this. I've got the experience. Qualification, honestly, for me, I'm doing it to self-actualize. So I am looking to get into senior management. Not necessarily, because I have been leading a function for a long time. For the longest time, it was leading from the back because I always had my manager who ultimately took responsibility. Now at Aeon, I'm leading from the front, right? Where I take ultimate responsibility for my function. But it's still not an influential role. So I want to get into a senior role where I can make an impact. Because one of the things that are close to my heart is company culture. It really, really matters to me. It's literally the be it and the end all to all companies. Like, culture can ruin you, even the greatest of companies. I've seen it. I've experienced it. Culture can ruin you. So for me, there's no reason why you should ever make people miserable. There's no reason at all. People spend 8 hours in their jobs. There's no reason why people should be miserable at work, because of behavior or treatment, So, and it's not even sustainable for a firm, right? So you can do it, but it's certainly not sustainable because people are going to walk away. So it doesn't serve a company to have a culture that is otherwise negative. So that's the area that I want to influence ultimately the most. That's where I want to work. So we have weekly planner meetings in the company, right? And every week, one of us hosts the planner meeting. And you can come with whatever topic your heart desires, for as long as it will be beneficial for the team. It can be can be a technical skill. It can be anything. Literally, you can talk about anything as long as it is interesting. I Since I started last year, I've only ever spoken about culture on many different levels. People know me for that. People know me for that. They already know me for that. They know. That's what I stand for. So I think I have already started to anyway operate in that role. Definitely I already have. There's no way, as soon as you realize where your mistakes lie, that day where you decide to make a change, your life is already different. So it will never be too late to pivot or change, because if you're not changing, it means you're staying miserable. So even if you pivot at 60, at least you got to a point where you made a change to do something differently. Because even now, I'm not at my destination yet. It's not even a destination, but I haven't acquired the things that I want to acquire yet. But I'm certainly feeling much better about myself because I'm doing something about my life instead of settling into a mistake and let it run my life. You see, now that is something that I could never have lived with. So it is obviously, the sooner you get it right, the better. So pivot early, very early in your career. But if you don't, you always have. It will never be too late, because you actually can't live like that. So we have just concluded a round of a very lengthy interviewing process, looking for additional people to join the firm, graduates in particular. And the one thing I can tell you that sets people apart is pivoting. You see it in how a person speaks. If you are interested in the asset management industry, you will know what a CFA qualification is. You will most likely even know, even though you don't know them personally, you'll know a few industry people already, So pivoting is so important, like career planning from the onset, even if it's high school, have an idea. And with that idea, you then go and look for role models or people that look like what you aspire towards. From there on, you'll probably find out about the different associations that are available within your industry. You join those associations, you get more information about the industry that you want to join. From there on, you'll get an idea of the qualifications that are required and the skills that are required. You already start to equip yourself. Most of the skills that are required in this industry is like your Excel skills, programming, Python, all of those things. There are so many free resources on the internet that you can use to gain those skills. So pivoting already gives you an advantage because you start to align yourself in every single way with the job that you want. And the other thing I would definitely say is research. I think it was mentioned earlier. It's so funny. Research is such a basic thing. It's such a how do you not research for an interview? How do you come to the interview and you only know one person sitting on the table when all our profiles are on the website for you to consume? So research is equally important. Mentorship is very important. I think, if you're lucky enough to get a mentor, get a mentor. But if not, you can just get on LinkedIn and start following the people that speak the language you understand. So, but definitely career planning, getting a mentor, and doing your research, that will definitely, without doubt, it will set you apart. Wellness for me is very important. That is why culture is important, because culture is the thing that leads to people either being well or not well. So wellness for me is at the top of my non-negotiables. So no one company is perfect. Don't even have that as an expectation. But you should certainly always leave if the minimum, according to you, is not being met in terms of how you are being treated as an individual and what your career aspirations look like within the firm. So always expect challenges within the working environment, but definitely move away from toxic work environments, because toxic work environments, they never change, they never change. So the best that you can do is to remove yourself from those environments. And the thing about toxic work environments is that they affect you for a long time. So you'll find yourself moving away from the environment, but still having to deal with the consequence of the environment. So it is definitely not worth it to stay in an environment that otherwise does not bring you wellness or you peace or anything like that. So for me, peace is definitely at the top of my list. I will not stay in an environment where I'm not at peace. Not 100% happy, because it's not possible, but definitely you must be able to sleep at night. You must be able to sleep. So I'm studying now. So I wake up 2-3 o'clock. I study up until 6 or 7. Sometimes I get my daughter ready for school. Sometimes mom helps out, but mostly she does it. So I'll study like up until like 7:30, and then get ready for work and start at 8. And then the joy of working from home, it works beautifully when you're a mother. So that's working for me right now. And then I generally knock off at 5 o'clock on the dot, unless I have unless I have to work more hours. I always do what I need to do, but generally I have learned to log off at 5, so that I can be with my daughter, and then end my day at 8 o'clock and do it again the following morning. And I probably just read on weekends when I get the chance. But right now, obviously, don't have like downtime to consume anything that's not academic. So yeah, that's generally how my life looks right now.